Hello, Cami. How you doing today?
Hi, Pat. Doing all right. It's beautiful, sunshiny, kind of fall, cool weather today in Minnesota, and I'm enjoying it. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I was thinking the same thing. It's like, oh my gosh, we're both in Minnesota. It has dropped, so dramatically. So it is like almost fall type weather. And then I think, the seasons are, and I can feel myself and I have to stop. Like, oh my gosh, it's getting darker earlier. Oh my gosh, before I know it, it's going to be dark really early. Oh my gosh, it's going to be cold and I'm not going to want to go outside as much. And so I have to almost like stop myself and get into the present moment, get out, breathe in this beautiful sunshine, embrace it, and
Yeah.
fill my cup so that when it starts getting into the other weather and seasons of winter where we go deep, that I still have that inside myself. So yeah.
Yeah. Taking in all the sunshine in summer while
Or
it's
I
still
just move to a place that's nice, warm, and sunny all winter long and be a snowbird. There's always
yeah,
that too.
it's an option.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, Pat, you mentioned that you just got home from this beautiful conference and retreat experience this weekend and had a lot of integrations that you were telling me about right before this recording. And I would love to hear more about how what you have to share from this experience, especially regarding grief, of course, and navigating grief and all of the healing that can come from diving into these modalities that you learned about.
Yeah. Well, first, I'll just share a little bit. I went to the Omega Institute, which is in upstate New York. And the property is beautiful. It's like 260 or more acreage, with just beautiful trails. And it's, farm to table food, very healthy. They grow a lot there from local people. And so the meals that are included, so it's kind of like an all-inclusive, and we were in dormitories. And so it was a group of friends, actually old friends, that I call my soul sisters, that, we have shared lots of things over the years. And then some new people had joined the group. So I met a lot of new people too. So we went first for R&R for the first 5 days, and it was just like be in nature and commune with each other and, you know, take time to rest if we needed to. But it was just like it was lovely, lovely how many days. And then it led up to over the weekend, starting last Friday evening, all day Saturday and Sunday morning, we were in a workshop with Dr. Brian Weiss. And Dr. Brian Weiss is a renowned psychiatrist, has headed up some psychiatry of some big hospitals and medical centers. He's very well known, highly respected, chair of, I think it's the head of psychiatry down in Miami. It has been that for a lot of years. And his whole thing was on past life regression and healing using hypnotherapy, past life regression therapy. And it was very interesting because when he started this many years ago, probably in his 30s, I suppose, by the time he got through med school and did all of his stuff, um, he had an individual who worked actually in the health center that I think he worked at and was having a lot of challenges. And he's written many books. So if anybody's interested, just Google Dr. Brian Weiss, Weiss, and you'll get all kinds of information and YouTube videos, all that. But anyway, so he had this first patient and through his psychiatry practice, and she was having, I don't even remember because I've read so many stories of his patients, but I don't know if it was anxiety or what all the issues were. And as he used hypnotherapy, which is a very common tool back, in Freud's day and, a psychotherapeutic tool, he was using some hypnotherapy to try to help, her with some of the things that she had been dealing with. And all of a sudden, she started talking about this life and these past life that she had. And it was very specific. And so as they had their engagement as patient doctor, she went and had how many different lifetimes kind of show up that were prior lifetimes. Now, I'm not telling everybody who's listening to this, yep, this is, you know, you don't have to believe any of this. You don't have to ascribe to any of this, but it's fascinating. And for him, it was like, okay, what is going on here? This is not what I went to school for and learned about, was these past lives. So he started using his hypnotherapy, and also because he was able to find that it helped in healing, that when people went through and were able to re-experience and view their past lives and actually went to the state of death and saw themselves and then rose above it. All of them have like similar stories. So it's very similar to people who have near-death experiences, NDEs. Most of them have very similar experiences. They see the white light, they may have raised above, they've seen things going on around them. And so that's what's kind of happening, is that they go into these past lives, and it may be like Roman era, BC eras. It could be in different countries. You may be a different gender. And as he's done so many of these, thousands and thousands, thousands of these, typically what they're seeing is, you know, they go in and they rise above, they actually can see and experience their death, very rapid, and then they move above it, and they're in a like a soul state, and their bodies are there, and then they're in this really cool, beautiful space. And they'll have, like, very common is to have what they call a life review. And it's like to say, okay, let's just look at this lifetime. What are, you know, what are all the activities, the actions, what you did, what you maybe didn't do. It's non-judgmental. It's just a very pure, just taking a look at it, almost like a little video of everything. And then they decide, you know, maybe they need to go back into another life to learn more, maybe experience something to correct something that maybe they had done in the, and it's not a judgmental thing. It's just like, oh, I can go back into this another life. And so then they get reborn into another life. And some of these people, like his first one, I think she had 80 some past lives. So that was like kind of, it's way heady for me, because I'm like, I don't know enough about it and haven't really experienced it, but it's fascinating. And you
Yeah.
start reading the stories, and it's like you can't make it up. And they've actually been able to, some people have been able to go and what do I want to say, confirm, because their past lives occurred, where they go to cemeteries, they can go do some ancestral, and some of these things are showing up for them, so that they can affirm that yes, this actually did happen. And then for those that were years and years ago, so he was talking about, he was it took him a long time to be able to get into a past life regression for himself. He could get his patients in, but he had one of the most profound was, he was like a priest, or a monk, I think he was a monk in way back in the day. And he was working with this and helping people in like the same thing, you know, past lives, kind of becoming aware of things and that type of stuff. And so he was killed for like heresy or whatever, you know, like he was a bad guy, you know, because that was just not in the realm. And so he was murdered. So he said it made sense when he started doing all these, he would not come out publicly. It took him a long time to come out publicly, because he said, this could ruin my career.
Wow.
Um, I'm pretty renowned. I'm well known. I don't know that I can risk that. I have a mortgage. I got a family. I've got all this kind of stuff. But then when he saw that past life, he realized that he really needed to speak up in this lifetime, because it provided healing.
Yeah.
So, his stories are just immense. I mean, I can't even get the icing on the cake on any of them. It's so much. But how he knew that this regression with this first person, she had like this, she would go on in between her past lives, in between the lives that she took, she had like this council of, like a spiritual council that were kind of her guides. And they gave her information about Dr. Weiss. And the information was about they had an infant die, yeah, or a young child die from a very, very rare condition. And she was able to describe that to him. And he was in utter shock because no one knew anything about this. It was not in any public information. It was, they had not done any obituaries, nothing. There's no way that she could have had any of that information. It was just held between he and his wife.
Wow.
And he was like, whoa. And then she brought forth some information about his dad. And again, he said, there's no way that she could know any of this stuff. And when he asked her how she knew that, it was because these guides had purview to all of this. And so that's where, and it was almost like to get him to understand that this is not made up stuff. This is real.
Mm.
So he's dealt with a lot of skeptics over his life, but he, he's been on Oprah, he's been on other national TV and stuff. He's done regressions with people. So I got to watch him. He brought a young girl up on stage and how quickly he can get them into this hypnosis and into a regression. And then he did group regressions. And I'm like, I've never been able to be hypnotized. I remember when I smoked like 30 years ago or whatever, like I would try all these, not, they're not putting me under. And I basically did go there. And I actually experienced 3 things that were just like, you question yourself, like, is this something because I knew? Is this just like my imagination? And he said, let it go. Don't analyze, just let it go. Observe. You can analyze things later, but while you're in that, really keep yourself in that state of you're just in observation. So I'm going to share the story. It's weird. And I know that people might look at this and think, you're wacko, Pat, but it's okay. I can't say what it is. I'm still processing all of this. But in one of the regressions, I went back to the time of, if anybody knows the Bible, I'm not a big Bible girl, but I've always been very attracted to the birth of Jesus through the crucifixion. I always felt like that was like I was there. But anyway, I went back and I was living in a village of people, and Herod's soldiers were coming to kill the children, the baby boys, because he had heard about the Messiah was born, Jesus was born, and that he was the Messiah. And so he ordered his soldiers to go around to all the homes and kill these children, these little boys, thinking, okay, we'll just get rid of them. We'll just and they did. And I had a little baby, little boy in my arms, and a soldier came in and sword and everything, and I could hear women screaming outside of my little abode and just screaming. And they grabbed my baby, my little boy, and I'm trying to grab back, and the soldier cut me with the sword, cut my arm, this arm, sliced it. And then I don't have all the details, all the rest of it. And I just remember just, oh, I was so angry, and just the hate that filled within me was just like, I was so, like any mother would be, just beyond comprehension. But then I went out and I started helping the other mothers who had suffered the same fate. And that was my job, because it was helping me. And then I came out of it and I'm like, whoa. So that cut on my arm is where I've had 4 surgeries on that arm. I have a big scar on my arm. I'm like, that is really bizarre. So did I make it up because I have this big, and why that? And then I think, wow, but this is what I do. My whole coaching practice has been for grieving moms. So that's just one of the bizarre stories that yeah, so I'm still processing. I'm still like in la la land a little bit, like, what does this all mean? Is it real? Is it not? Does it matter? Um, but he found that he could help people in their grief. When people went through the past life regressions, because he had experienced the death of his own child too. But when people came to him and they would just be in the depths of such deep grief, the past life regressions actually help them find healing in their grief because they realize that this is just a physical body and that the soul always is, the spirit always is there and alive. And you generally will come back, and the people that were important in your life in this lifetime are the people that were important in your life in other lifetimes, and most likely will be in future if you do that. And so, but you and I might have been sisters, right? We might have went around and who knows. My mother might have been my daughter. And he said, you look into their eyes when you're in this and see if you recognize them. And oftentimes you're going to recognize that it's someone in your life today that is very important to you, or that, and I used to always say, my mom and I, my mom was around for 96 and a half years. We had loved her so desperately, but we had a real interesting relationship. And it could be very tension filled, but yet we were connected so deeply. And I remember, and I didn't know anything about past life regressions, but I just knew that, and I would say to people, she and I have done this dance many, many, many times. I just know, I don't know why, but I just know we've done this dance many, many times, and we're going to heal it this time because this is the last time we're doing this dance together. It's the last time we're going to do this kind of dance together. And I feel like we were able to do that just through the process. And it wasn't consciously, but it was just like a subconscious knowing that she and I have been together in many renditions of this. And it was like we needed to come to peace. And we did. I think we both did in those last years. But that's how it helps with the grief, is knowing that there is this is just a physical body, and our souls, our spirits, our energy, and they don't stay within this physical body. So when people see themselves die and then rise above it, it's like, oh, that's what happened with my child or my husband. Oh my gosh. And so then it gives such a healing and hope for people. So I know that was a long story, but there's just so much there, but that was kind of high level.
Yeah, wow. I mean, that sounds like such an intense experience to like just be in that meditative space and to have all these different experiences. And it sounds like a lot of the theme for the weekend, and just with your work in general with creating the school and your experience with your mom and of course your brother, is all about, losing children. And I think losing a young son, a baby boy, and how that theme has like come up again and again and again throughout, your past lives and what you had experienced in that regression, and then also the work that you do with the people that, that are
Yeah.
called to you in this work as well. I think that's just incredible.
It's crazy. And then out of the group of women, there were 4 women that I've known for many years, but there was 12 of us. So what's that? 8 that I had never met before, never engaged with. And within that group was a mom that her daughter died by suicide 9 years ago. And she immediately, you know, after people are asking me what I do, just came right up and we just had some really beautiful conversations. And she, it's been 9 years. And what I sensed with her is that she felt like she needs to move forward and get over it. And so I was really sharing with her that it's not about getting over, it's about integrating. That it sounds like she's ready to start stepping into her purpose, but she's not clear what her purpose is yet. She's got some thoughts, but she needs to speak about her daughter, and she sees her daughter in a very different light, now that it's 9 years after, but the grief is still so embedded in her. And it goes back to, what we talk about, like with the science of grief. The grief is always going to be there. The act of, the verb of grieving is what's really going to fluctuate. But that grief is love. And so we can't say, okay, I'm just going to pluck out my love and the grief and whoop, it's out of my being.
Yeah.
And so I really tried to help her, you know, to understand that, yes, she's starting to have some awakening and some, really wanting this spiritual awakening with everything and lift up. Yet she's still 9 years later, like but I'm not sure what my purpose is. And so I'm actually going to run her human design. I got all of that information. So when I have some time, we do human design in our courses as, with our certification courses to help people understand who they came to be. And it's almost like that correlates kind of cool with like the past life regression, right? Like, there's just so many little nuances, like all of this kind of comes together and helps people understand, oh, yeah, this is why I'm here. And I think that is probably the biggest healing thing that we as coaches can support our clients with is to find that life of purpose. What is it that's just going to help them move forward? And so with this new friend, I'm really going to stay connected with her and hopefully maybe help to, have her have some insight because she's the one that has the knowledge.
Yeah.
But finding that insight maybe through the human design and some of these other and just conversations, like what might that look like for her?
That's beautiful. And it's interesting that you have been having these conversations because at home here, I've been having these conversations with people in my grief group about what does it really mean to move on, and that these conversations have opened up different perspectives as far as like you're talking about this kind of spiritual perspective of zooming out and seeing that, we have these human physical bodies and we have this larger part of us that does rise above once we die and the soul lives on, and whatever your perspective might be on it. But it's like we all have this knowing that there is something more, and how both of these perspectives, like in my mind, there's kind of that spirituality soul perspective, that infinite life that we all have, and then there's of course the temporary body and life that we have here as humans, and how can we hold space for both of these to be true at the same time without dismissing one or the other.
Right.
And this is kind of the conversation that I've been having here, is like, yes, the spiritual truth is so important to recognize, and I think can bring a lot of healing, but that doesn't necessarily disregard the humanness and the part of our experience here that is searching for that meaning and is searching for the healing and still has all of these intense grief experiences and this emotional expression of the pain that we feel from loss. And how can both of these be true at the same time while honoring that connection? So I think it's interesting that like
Mm.
what you're sharing about all of this is like wrapping all of this up into this cohesive like integration of like, yes, both, and like both of these get to be true. And I think that's really cool that you're speaking to like the breathe program and the certification program, how it ties in all of this, like, yes, let's be in this human experience and work through a lot of, this emotional expression and the pain and all of these real experiences that we have with loss. And what's your purpose, and how can we honor and remember your precious beloved, and remember that they have a spirit and a soul, and that you're still connected to them, and that they're still here with you, even though this other part of you understands that they're not here with you. So it's kind of like, wow, how can we find like that balance of what this means to each person, to find their sense of meaning and their sense of purpose, and to take that into like, okay, well, what am I here to do now with this?
Right.
And how that's so different for everybody. But I like that both get to be true.
And I love that you're saying that, because I think sometimes people are well intentioned but want people to go into that spiritual mindset. And it's like that may not be where the person who's grieving needs to be right now. They need to be in the physical sense. They're
Yeah.
grieving the physical loss of someone. And we know that the brain is a computer that needs to have some recoding done over time. And so I just encourage people that are watching this is it's not an all or none. It is a both and you'll know when if you're the person who's grieving, or if you're supporting someone who is grieving, when that time comes to open up the possibilities of this spiritual being, and
Yeah.
to help, foster what does my purpose look like. I have one more quick story to tell you. So this is another bizarre one. It's all about kind of the spiritual realm. So my cousin she wasn't with us for our group. She had gone off to eat at a little cafe, and I kind of left the group and thought, "Oh, I'm just going to go there before bedtime and just stop in and see what she's up to." And she was sitting with a woman who is a psychic medium, and she's pretty well respected and known. She does a lot of work with federal, state, and local authorities in missing person cases and things like that, because she has that kind of psychic ability, and cold cases, missing persons, that type of thing. And she's from Long Island. So if anybody's seen the Long Island medium, a lot of that personality type. But anyway, so we're sitting at a table, and my cousin said, "Oh, I wanted you guys to introduce," because she does work with grief groups, like with her mediumship and psychic stuff, and wanted to introduce me because of what I do, with the school and grief support. So we were just talking, and I'm kind of listening, being kind of quiet, actually. I wasn't like peppering her with questions. And even though I love being around psychics and mediums, because it just fascinates me when I know that I can feel in my heart that they truly are tapped in. Sometimes there's people that are not that, and they may be not as authentic. So anyway, so more people started gathering as she was talking about what she does, like on these cold cases, and how she taps in to find, like into the missing person's body. She has her own way of seeing, hearing, feeling, from her capabilities. And she's a second generation. Her mom was also doing this kind of work. And now she has a daughter who also is showing these capabilities. So anyway, so I'm just sitting there, and our table starts getting filled because people are a little bit fascinated. Some of our group are coming. And then all of a sudden she's looking around and around the tent. She kept like peeking over at me and looking around, peeking over at me. And she goes, um, "Who's the person that died? Male figure, and it was tragic and unexpected, like a blow to the head or something like that." And everybody's looking around, and I'm not thinking, I don't know. And she keeps looking at me, kind of looking at me. And I'm like, I don't know anybody that like hit their head and died, or, just really wasn't like connecting the dots whatsoever. And so she's like, "Well, and there's something with a G name." No, it's like, it's a male figure, and I'm just not catching on. And so she keeps asking more questions. And then finally I said, well, I had a brother that died in late 2021. And he could have hit his head. I don't, I mean, he was found in the bathroom, so he might have experienced a head injury before, but it was tragic and unexpected. That's him. She goes, I'm like, whoa, okay. And she goes, and there's a G name and G, like Gene or I don't know. And she just kept like going with this and, like Gene or something like that. And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Doesn't resonate for me whatsoever. And then she goes, well, what has to do with who had a birthday like more recently, that there was a birthday more recently? And she's looking at me and all these people are like watching and I'm like, well, if you're talking about my brother, his birthday was July 5th and he and my mom had the same birthday. She goes, what's the 22nd? And I'm like, well, my birthday's June 22nd. She's like, that's what he wants me to tell you, is that he wanted to wish you a happy belated birthday. And I'm like, and she goes, he's been like bugging me and being very annoying. Like, I need to talk to my sister. I need to talk to my sister. I need to talk to my sister. And I'm like, he never talked to me. I said, I've been trying to talk to him since he died and he's never shown up. And I'm like, this is like bizarre. And he never talked to me much. He was kind of on his own trajectory. Nope. He's like, absolutely, absolutely want to talk to you. And your mother's there with him. And I didn't tell her that my mom died. And but there's a G, like an unusual name or a G or something. And then my cousin looks and she goes, well, you did have a brother named Greg who died. Like, that's it. That's it. He wants you to know that his mother and your brother are with him. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then she said, he's got kind of a what kind of sense of humor? Like a dry sense of humor, doesn't he? And I'm like, yeah, that would be, my brother had a very dry sense of humor. And then she said, he has just been so insistent. So all these people are watching and she's connecting these dots. And it's like, well, yeah, maybe she could have, because she's asking the questions, right? Um, but then she just said, he just wants you to know that he's really, really proud of who you are and what you're doing. Now, this was my oldest brother. He's the one who took care of me when my mom went to work. He's 9 years older than me. He was the one that was like my parent, the caretaker as a little child. And so I always looked up to him. And it was like, I was like, wow, it was just so emotional. Out of random, just out of the blue. And I didn't ask her. Then everybody else wanted her to be. And she's like, no, I'm booked out 2 years for readings. And I thought, oh, how fortunate that I got this free reading without even asking for it. Because I always try to be honoring of people who have these gifts because yeah, you just don't like get into their space and then all these others look at it and she's like, if you want, here's my information. I'm just telling you that I'm booked out 2 years. But please feel free and tell them that you met me here and then maybe we can fit you in. But I'm like, that was a weird experience.
Wow. Oh, Pat, that's awesome. It's like, I mean, your brother was bringing you together to get this message across, and it was like he was pretty insistent on telling you this. And
Yeah.
now here you are, who you just randomly, met this woman at a cafe, and your brother was able to tell you this.
Yeah. So it's yeah. So I mean I have but I'm just still processing all of this. Now again, I choose to believe that my loved ones do show up for me. He's been kind of hard though, because I've really been saying, Steve, you could show up. Other people show up. Mom shows up for me all the time. Greg's been with me because I believe my brother Greg probably reincarnated in with me because his soul, I had the message a long time ago that I was born through you. And I'm like, okay, that was Greg. Um, so I do have that belief, but I know there's a lot of skeptics out there, like you're full of it. Just so full of it. So, but yeah, so I guess what I can say is I encourage people who are listening, you may be a skeptic and that's okay. But what if, what if there's that possibility that this is true. What might it do for your healing when your heart feels just so broken? That's all she wrote.
Yeah. Just letting that land, like, wow, yeah. I also have had experiences of connecting with spirit and loved ones through beyond, their human bodies, and I had that skepticism and kind of that scientific mind for a long time, but it's like once I relaxed into this knowing that I had these feelings and these messages, even just now sitting with your stories, I feel like that little intuitive hit where they're just like just so happy that we get to share this and just offer this perspective to people who really might be needing to hear this.
Mhm.
I think it's easy to we might we might dismiss messages or signs that we know are our person, but it's like we think that it's crazy, we dismiss it because how can that possibly be true? But it's like, well, what if, yeah, like you're saying, what if there is the possibility that, yes, you know that this was a sign or a message or whatever you needed to hear or see, and that because that you felt that and you resonated with it, and you get to decide what that means to you, right? There's no right or wrong or judgment, but that what if it's possible and what if it could be true? And the healing that could come from that.
Yep. And I'm just going to leave it with this. Einstein proved that energy cannot be destroyed. Energy can change, it can transform, it can expand, but you can't destroy energy. And from a scientific perspective, and there's lots of science out there about that, wouldn't that be the same with our energy of our spiritual being? That's just where I go, is like, and I've always known this since I was a little girl. I've always been tapped into, that's my story. But I definitely, when I'm working with clients, I don't, or students, it's like I'm not going to impart upon them that they need to feel this way. I just
Yeah.
share my stories,
Yeah.
So yeah. Well, thanks for listening. I mean, this is like, I didn't expect this to be what we were talking about today, but that's the beauty of, the Confident Grief Coach show, is we just go wherever spirit leads us.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your stories and for offering this perspective. Of course, as you're integrating and processing these experiences, it's been really cool to see how these nuggets are landing with you and just how this can affect our listeners and just the
Yeah.
awe that I'm experiencing from listening to this as well. So thank you.
Stay tuned. So thanks, everybody. And we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.